7:51. Checking in with Chuck Canterbury. He's the national president for the Fraternal Order of Police. Good morning, Chuck Canterbury. Welcome to St. Louis and welcome to Big 550 KTRS.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. First, let's start with something that, and I might be showing my hand a little bit, but we've been dealing with this for the last 3 or 4 weeks now, and I just don't understand it when people get upset when they see police with riot gear on after there was rioting, and then they say, how dare these police show up in the streets with riot gear? It just makes no sense to me.
Well, I believe if they'd have showed up without their gear and the criminal element that took place in that area would have went out on their nightly activities, the police would have been criticized for not having the gear.
Matter of fact, they were criticized the first night when the Quick Trip first burned down because they weren't doing enough. And so then they came out with some of the riot gear. And the riot gear was more or less of a defensive posture, was it not, than anything else?
Absolutely. I mean, we don't even use the term riot gear anymore. It's protective gear. Helmets, shields, ballistic vests to protect the police officers that were out on the line from the criminals, not from peaceful protesters.
Yeah. What I find interesting about this was that so many people, both from the Republicans as well as the Democrats, criticized the police on this. It was shocking that so many people from both sides of the aisle were critical of the police.
Well, anytime you have a media-centered event such as this, and they concentrate on 1 or 2 incidents that, from the perception, looks tough, I believe it's this is an election year, and I believe that they like to jump on the fact that the police are not the military. Well, our position is that we're charged with the exact same responsibility, and that's protecting life and property.
Yeah. Chuck, what has happened over the last couple of years? We had a police officer on the show say, let's go back to the 60s and look at some of the equipment they had then, and it's somewhat similar to what the equipment is being used today. How much different is this quote-unquote military equipment today?
Well, first of all, it's all repurposed for public safety use, and it's demilitarized. The shields and maybe better, lighter materials allows the officer to hold the material longer or wear the material longer, but essentially performs the same responsibility it did in the 1968 riots or any of the G8 riots or
right.
Any of those riots. It's just, it's better and lighter equipment, but materially it's not changed.
Can I ask you something, Chuck? This is Sharon Stevens. Is there a point of compromise here? I mean, there are people who are opposed to police departments using this kind of equipment. Your group says, hey, this is, necessary. Is there a point where you could compromise with those who are opponents at this point? Are there pieces of equipment that you think, well, okay, we could do without those?
Well, some of the equipment that I've heard, tanks, which in my 30-year career, I've never seen a law enforcement agency receive a tank. But the vast majority of this equipment would be available on the open private market. The bottom line is taxpayers have already paid for this equipment, and it's being repurposed for local law enforcement. And, control of the equipment is important. Inventory of the equipment is important. Proper training is important. But when you're talking about weapons, law enforcement officers have been receiving training in weapons for 100 years. The MRAPs and other type equipment really doesn't take a lot of training other than driving. They're armored vehicles, not armed vehicles. So I'm not sure that there needs to be a compromise. I think that a full explanation of the use of the equipment, and I believe the American public would actually support it. After 9/11, our mission changed.
Yeah, not only that, you also are charged with, on any given day, you can be asked to go into a second-story building at a school or some type of terrorist situation or some type of drug deal gone bad, and the bad guys, they got all the weapons and they got all the tools, and if we're calling you to help us, you better have something equal, if not stronger, bigger, and better to combat the bad guys.
Absolutely. You don't meet force with force. You meet force with greater force. I mean, the cartels have submarines. So local law enforcement's combating a criminality that is much more technologically advanced than they've ever been in the past, and without this equipment, we'll have a hard time completing our mission.
Do you see this sort of dying down? Do you see this having any legs? Do you ever see the police culture sort of going backwards? I mean, you just have to weather the storm, or what are your thoughts going forward?
Well, I don't believe the police culture has become more militaristic. I actually believe the military has become more like us. We're used to watching the World War II movies where there were big tank battles. That's not the method of war now. It's urban-style warfare and nation building and community relations. The military are out working in schools, building water plants, doing the same thing that we try to do with community-oriented policing.
Community-oriented policing. Talk about that for a moment, because the police in Ferguson have been criticized for not knowing the people that they patrol. Speak to that for a moment.
Well, I think it's essential for all communities to come together, churches, public and private institutions, and work together in a collaborative effort. And I can't speak to Ferguson because I've never been there, and,
sure.
I don't really know what their methods are. But it relates all back to poverty. And anytime you have a situation in this country where communities are in deep poverty, community-oriented policing is very difficult because they're more call responsive, and it's not cheap. And the citizens have to be willing to have enough manpower and the ability of the citizens to all come together and work together, and it comes at a price.
Chuck Canterbury, we're going to have to leave it there, the National President for the Fraternal Order of Police. Chuck, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
7:58, St. Louis